Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Mayor Minute. My name is Cheryl Vercammen. I'm the Mayor of Marine City, and today we have the pleasure to talk with David Struck, who is the Metropolitan Planning
Director and Deputy County Administrator.
And Deputy County Administrator for St. Clair County.
Yep.
And today we're talking about an important issue coming to our area, not just our community, but our area, which is the possible expansion of the 26-mile corridor, Marine City Highway, from I-94 to King Road.
King Road, yeah.
Yep. So I always like to start off with the little stuff, right? So tell me about yourself and how you got to Metropolitan Planning.
Yeah, so I've been with St. Clair County since 2004, so I've been almost 18 years now, all with the Metropolitan Planning Commission. So I started out there as a planner too, and over the years took on more responsibility, became the planning director in 2011, and then I became also the Deputy County Administrator in 2020. And so I manage the day-to-day operations of the planning department for the county, and we get involved with a lot of different projects, both internally and externally. So we work with a lot of the local communities, and then we also do a lot of work with other county departments and other partner agencies as well throughout the county.
And what's your educational background?
So I've got a bachelor's degree in public administration from Grand Valley State, and then a master's degree in urban and regional planning from Michigan State.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So besides this project, anything cool coming to our area? Anything you can talk about
Well,
briefly?
we've been busy doing some longer range plans. Like I said, we work a lot with some of the other county departments. So we've just been wrapping up the hazard mitigation plan with emergency management. And so that'll actually cover all of the municipalities in St. Clair County. That's currently going through the review process with the Michigan State Police, ultimately FEMA. We're also working on the county master plan right now, which kind of takes a look at sort of everything in terms of land use, transportation, sort of a big picture view.
Yeah.
We just did a series of community visioning meetings that we just wrapped up last month. We did 3 of those in different parts of the county to get some citizen input on the county master plan. And so, and then we also, like I said, work with a lot of local units. So we assist townships and cities with their master plans, their 5-year recreation plans, sometimes zoning issues that come up. We just recently completed the county's 5-year recreation plan. And the recreation plans are important because those are required by the DNR for local units of government to be able to go after grant funding for parks and recreation. Right. So yeah, we work a lot with a lot of different entities, and I think one of the other really cool things we're doing right now is we're working with the Community Foundation, with the Friends of the St. Clair River, and a lot of other community partners to fill the gaps of the Bridge to Bay Trail, complete our regional trail network. So there's a lot going on, a lot of great opportunities here in the county, and great, natural and recreational resources that we can build upon. And so very excited to be able to have those opportunities to kind of work on a lot of different things.
Yeah, the Bridge to Bay Trail is a great project. People that walk and bike, and it's just a great way to get from point A to point B without traversing a highway if you're a biker.
Absolutely.
A bicyclist, I should say. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
In fact, whenever we do visioning meetings, over the years with communities or surveys, trails is always like right at the top of the list. More trails. People love the parks and trails that we do have in the county, and they'd certainly like to see more.
We do have a lot of parks in our county. A lot of nice parks in our county. It's kind of interesting if you're always looking for something to do with the kids for a couple hours. I always recommend look up the different, because there's such a variety that we have. Some have really cool learning centers, and some are just a park where you just pull in and go for a walk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I've always been impressed by from the moment I got to the county, was the amount of public access to the waterfront. I mean, we have a lot, if you go into St. Clair, Algonac, Marine City, we have tons of waterfront parks, right? So it really allows people to really get close to the waterfront and be a destination in and of itself.
Right. All right, who is your administrator?
So for the Metropolitan Planning Commission, I'm the planning director. So like I said, I manage the day-to-day operations of the department, sort of oversee the work program, the different projects that we work on. And then we also have an 11-member planning commission, just like a lot of the cities and townships have.
Yep.
We have a planning commission that has 11 members. They're appointed by the County Board of Commissioners. And each of those planning commissioners represent a different segment of the community. So we have somebody that represents economic development, somebody that represents recreation and tourism, education, agriculture. So we try to hit those key areas of St. Clair County to have representation on our planning commission. And then we also have 2 citizens at large as well that are on there. And so they are the ones that ultimately, when we take anything that needs action from the County Planning Commission, they are ultimately the body that makes those decisions. We have a staff of professional planners, 6 professional planners, including myself, that will often review, a lot of times in Michigan when a township does a rezoning, they'll send it to the County Planning Commission for a review and recommendation. So we have a staff that does those reviews, makes those recommendations, but ultimately it's the planning commissioners that make those decisions. And then anything that needs to get filtered up to the County Board of Commissioners, those recommendations will come from our planning commission.
Yeah. And where is your office located? Where is Metropolitan Planning?
We are located in the County Administration Building in downtown Port Huron. We're up on the 2nd floor. And yeah, we have a small office, but we're accessible anytime somebody wants to give us a call or pop in.
Right. All right, let's get down to the business at hand.
Sure.
How did the Marine City Highway project, or the study, I should say, it's not really a project yet, right? The study come to be?
Yeah, exactly. So it is, at this juncture, it is a study. And the way this came about really was, if you go back, a little over a year ago when the American Rescue Plan funds started to be announced, and as you know, the cities and townships and counties across America, all of them are getting some level of funding through the American Rescue Plan Act. And so our County Board of Commissioners, of course, started to look at how they wanted to, invest those funds, how to do so in a smart way and what were important priorities for the community. And so after some discussions, they've decided that they'd like to look at potentially using those funds, the bulk of those funds, for infrastructure investments. And some of that kind of couples with other efforts that have been taking place for many years. As you know, we've got the Economic Development Alliance in St. Clair County, and they are charged with working through the state and through other channels to try to attract businesses, companies, try to attract jobs, as well as retain the jobs and companies that we already have in the area. And so, we've kind of been seeing what's been going on over the last few years in terms of some of the trends. We see that, at that intersection at 94 and 26 Mile Road, we know that there's been some growth that's starting to push in towards St. Clair County, right? You've got 3 medical facilities that have either gone in or are in the process of being completed. Right. Certainly with the Myers store that's there. We know that hospitals, they don't just put facilities someplace without any rhyme or reason. They have their own people that are doing a vast amount of location analysis and demographic studies. And so certainly that was something that piqued our attention. They're going into that interchange. You've got the influences of Macomb County on the other side of the freeway. You've got Lenox Township that has seen growth. You've got Chesterfield Township, which has obviously experienced a lot of growth. There's a small chunk of Chesterfield Township that's on the southeast corner of the interchange. They recently just completed a master plan, and they're looking at potentially like some sort of a mixed-use town center development at that portion, right? And so, we've got all those sort of growth influences happening in Macomb County. And then, as I mentioned, the EDA working toward trying to, bring jobs into the area. We're at a point right now in the county, and it's not unique to just St. Clair County, that there's a lack of places to potentially put new companies and new investment. We just had the Magna plant that came in recently, but what do we do when the next one comes in? It's almost to the point, and I know anecdotally they've had to essentially not go after certain projects because we just don't have land to potentially pitch for a company. And certainly companies, when they're looking for places to put a facility or invest, they've got certain characteristics in a site that they're looking for, whether it's proximity to freeway access, whether it's
Sure.
rail, power. In our case, we've got the international border close to Canada. Very good infrastructure in terms of the freeway system. So it all depends on, of course, the company and what they're trying to do. But our commissioners have always had a goal of, being able to support job creation in the community.
Sure.
So knowing that this looks like it's going to be a growth corridor, the potential for investing in infrastructure certainly is something that they wanted to look at. But that being said, it's not something that they want to do arbitrarily. They're not just going to start running water and sewer pipes without any sort of plan. And so that's really where this study comes in. We wanted to take a step back and really take a full, comprehensive look at this corridor, because as we all know, the issues and the concerns, the traffic issues, those things don't just start and stop at township borders, right? I mean, this is a very dynamic corridor. The study area itself is actually 11 miles in length, so we're looking really from county line to King Road. But again, infrastructure and transportation and land use, those things are totally related to one another. And so we really need to understand what the current situation is along the corridor, as well as looking at what the local communities that have jurisdiction along those corridor are doing. What they've got currently in terms of their plans, their different policies, and then what they've got planned for the future, right? So they all have master plans, they all have future land use maps within those plans, and so we're certainly taking into all of that as we move ahead. So. In terms of the overall scope of work for this, as I said, this is really meant to be a really deep dive into the Marine City Highway corridor. In order for any decisions to be made about the future, we really have to kind of turn over each stone and kind of get a really clear understanding so that decisions are made in a responsible way that makes sense fiscally, and that results in something along that corridor that our communities and our citizens want to see, right?
Yeah.
So, in terms of the overall scope of work, when we put this out, for proposals or requests for proposals to planning firms to take on this project, we basically said there's 6 elements that are key to this project, and they had to tell us, how they were going to roll through each one of those elements. And so those different elements are public involvement. There's actually going to be a market analysis as part of this project. Land use planning is of course a huge component of this project. Transportation planning, infrastructure planning in terms of the water and sewer, and then a regulatory review and how things might be able to be implemented when this thing is done.
Right.
And so I can roll through what some of that means for each of these different components, of course. Because as you said, this is a study.
It's a study.
So I
right.
want to be clear that there's nothing that's proposed right now. There's no plans to do any sort of road widening. That would come as a result of this plan that would have recommendations after everything's been studied. And again, we need to look at these other things to determine what sort of road issues are going to exist, right?
Right.
And again, anecdotally, we already know firsthand that there's concerns about the traffic congestion. There's high speeds there.
Yeah.
Even from the business community, they've got concerns about their employees.
Sure.
There's
trying to pull out onto 26 when the average person's doing 60 miles an hour. Has there been a traffic study done yet? Is that part of it?
That's part of this, yeah. And I'll certainly dive into the transportation side in just a minute. But that's essentially what they're going to be looking at in terms of some of the traffic issues on here. Getting back to a land use standpoint, local master plans are very important. And so we need to understand what their plans currently say and what they're calling for in the future. And at that same time, we know that in the past few years, we've seen a lot of this growth start to occur in some of these recent trends. Some of the plans that exist along the corridor right now, some of the township master plans, are getting to be a little bit old. So some of the community plans are from 2004, 2005. I think China Township had done a light amendment in 2013. Cotcherville Township, I think, did a light amendment in 2016. But even then, I mean, we're starting to get 5, 6 years beyond
Sure.
that. And,
Yep.
I think a lot of things have changed, sort of, brought upon by COVID. There's different travel patterns for sure. You've got things like remote work that is certainly influencing how businesses operate. And so, it's definitely a good idea for those communities. At some point, I'm assuming they're going to do a master plan update, right?
Yeah.
And doing this project that we're working on right now, this corridor plan, if nothing else, it's going to be a benefit to those townships as they do any future planning, because there's going to be a lot of data and analysis that they just wouldn't have otherwise had.
Right, and you have to take so much into consideration. And how many communities and how many townships are involved with that 11 miles?
So I've got a map of the existing land use right up here, but there's 4 townships that are right on the corridor directly, and then of course you've got Marine City and East China Township that are sort of on the border of the corridor on King Road. And certainly what happens in the corridor affects those communities.
Sure.
And vice versa. And of course you've got Lenox Township and Chesterfield Township and even the city of New Baltimore on the Macomb side. So it's a lot of different entities, right?
Yeah.
And as I said, these issues don't start and stop at the borders. And so this will really be the first opportunity for these communities to look at the corridor holistically and as a bigger picture view than just their township borders, which I think is a really good opportunity.
It is a good opportunity.
So the consultants that we have working on it, Wade Trim, they're going to be looking at those internal and external factors that are driving growth. So a lot of those things I mentioned that are taking place in Macomb County. They'll be looking at all the latest demographic information. They'll be looking at recent developments that have taken place along the corridor, or developments that might be known right now that are coming down the pipe. Things like buildings and signage and landscaping often might be overlooked when it comes to thinking about the corridor, because certainly the big issues are traffic and safety, of course. But in terms of some of the other corridors that people might be familiar with throughout Southeast Michigan that have really grown fast, and oftentimes it might be a hodgepodge of uses.
Right.
You might see signage that's just out of control and a large number of driveways along the road,
Right.
which creates safety issues. There's landscaping issues and blight, of course. And so, one of the things they'll do, and I'll talk about the regulatory review that the consultants are going to be doing as well, but, you've got one township on the north side of the road, and you've got a township on the south side of the road. So if they've got different signage requirements and different landscaping requirements and different other standards for storage or different standards for zoning requirements for certain types of land uses, I mean, that's going to be evident as stuff starts to happen on the corridor. So the idea will be to look at those land use factors and to see where there's inconsistencies, where there's gaps, and then where there's opportunities for there to be more cohesive development, more cooperative type planning.
Right.
Try to have a long-term vision for the entire corridor that's not sort of siloed to each community.
One of the things that I think is great and a big benefit for doing a study like this so early is, I'll give you an example, Hall Road, right? That area back in the late 70s, early 80s, there was just a boom, that northern Sterling Heights area. It was just a boom. And it connected into Troy and Rochester, and next thing you know, this massive road's being built, and I mean, and we all suffered through it because, we all, shopped there and that kind of stuff. And then there was multiple driveways, like you said, and when you do something like this in these infancy stages, in the super early planning, or study, I should say, and you come together with all of these municipalities and all these different entities, you can really come up with a very good plan so that there's only like a few roads leading onto a major road. There's more back roads, and I mean, it's, it can work to our advantage, to everyone's advantage, to to have this study done as early as it is. I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, and again, I mean, it's really a matter of trying to be proactive as opposed to reactive.
Right.
You know, I mentioned the American Rescue Plan Act funding. Of course, that's something that's been kind of out in the forefront, of course. But there's a lot of new state and federal sort of infrastructure funding. There's different grant programs that are available to varying different levels of government, so townships, cities, counties. And oftentimes, whenever you have a plan that's been developed with some wide-scale buy-in, that's multi-jurisdictional in nature, you know, more than just one community, those often tend to be looked upon pretty favorably by state and federal agencies because they know you've done your homework, and that also puts you in a position, as I said, to be proactive and kind of get out ahead of things, right? So, you know, I mentioned the hospital facilities that are being built at the interchange, and you know, sort of this feeling that growth is coming. That's probably going to happen at different speeds over the course of time. But now is a great time to kind of look at these things and get out in front and you know, put a vision together that can be executed by the local communities.
So you mentioned, you know, community involvement. Let's talk about the meetings that are planned, because there's many meetings, and what I'm hearing, you know, on the street is that I just want the public to know that their input is obviously, you know, will be well received, but it's not going to be run like, you know, a city commission meeting or something, you know, where you go up to a podium and you just say, you know, yes, I like this, no, I don't, you know, whatever. These meetings are going to be a little differently. They're going to be more workshop meetings, right? So can you explain that?
Exactly. Yeah. So we do have some public engagement opportunities that are planned, and we've been promoting them already. So the public forum is going to be held on June 29th at 6 o'clock in the evening. That's going to be at the Lions Club of Marine City. And as you said, the idea is to bring people in and to really have it be more of like a visioning workshop where we can, our consultants will be putting out a series of different leading questions or sort of conversation starters to really get people to think deeply about the corridor. You know, so the idea will be to kind of put them in smaller groups, you know, around round tables where they can kind of work at it as a smaller group and share ideas and brainstorm, and then they'll report out to the larger group. And the reason it's done this way is for a few reasons. You know, number one, if it's more of that sort of public hearing style that typically kind of happens at a council meeting or a planning commission meeting, where people can kind of just go up to the podium. You got
your 3 or 5 minutes. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
It's sort of you have your time you're allotted. It's kind of a one and done, and you know, there's no real interaction, and that's not what we're trying to do at this stage of the project. On the front end of the project, we're really trying to get from people what their ideas are, what they like about the corridor, what they may not like about the corridor right now, what concerns they have. And oftentimes what we've seen happen when we do these visioning meetings throughout the communities is that, you know, it's something about brainstorming, just the ideas start to flow. And I think people really appreciate that opportunity to be interactive. It also helps some of those, you know, there's always people who may not be as comfortable, you know, going up to a podium and speaking about a particular topic. And so this gives the opportunity for everybody to play a role, to be involved and to interact. And so the way that meeting will be run on June 29th, our consultants will sort of kick off the evening with kind of an overview presentation, just some background on the project and the study area. But then they're going to dive into sort of exercises and discussion pieces where we can really try to draw out what people's thoughts are, what they would like to see for the future of the corridor.
So when you say they break off into groups, like who organizes the groups? Do you just say, okay, I need 8 people here, I need 8 people there? Yeah,
that'll be run by weight trim, but generally, you know, most of the time people just come in and have a seat around the table, and then they'll everything will be facilitated through our consultants, and you know, they'll all have an opportunity to voice their thoughts.
So is every table going to be given like a question or a task, or how does that work?
Well, I don't know exactly how they're going to run it, because again, they're going to be the ones doing it. But generally, everybody will be working on the same issue at the same time.
Okay.
You know, so they'll have some time to discuss it as a small group. There's like a big pad of a big tablet at the table, and there's usually a facilitator at that table as well. And then they'll have so much time will be given to sort of discuss that particular topic, and then when that's done, usually what we would do, and they may do the same thing, is they'll kind of go around to each table and say, why don't you tell us what your top 3 or 5 issues for this particular question or topic was, and that way every group around within the meeting can kind of hear the different thought processes and different ideas that may have been brought up.
Sure. Yeah. I thought it was very important to let everybody know that the format style of the meeting is going to be different than what they may have been told or what they're used to. Sure. Do we want public input? Of course we want public input, but the style is just going to be a little different. And many people might attend just because they have questions. That's why I thought it was really important for you to come on today, and the earlier the better. And maybe sitting at the comfort of your own home, you can have your questions answered, by your presentation and by the the information that you brought with your PowerPoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to piggyback on the discussion on some of the public input, so we also have an online survey that is now open. It's live on the web. So you can find this information on the Metropolitan Planning Commission's website. We also just put it out on the county Facebook page. But the survey is open. The survey is all online. You can do it from your phone, from a computer. You can basically access it through the direct web link, or there's a QR code that's on the flyer. But you can go on there, and there's a number of questions where you also have an opportunity to open-ended questions, where you'll have an opportunity to provide your ideas, your input, concerns. That'll be open through July 15th. So that's another route that people have to provide input to this project.
Do you have access to the survey?
Online?
I'm just curious, because is it like is it SurveyMonkey or whatever?
It's SurveyMonkey.
Yeah.
It's through the Wade Trim's. Yeah.
How long does it take to get through the survey?
Not very long. It's not a overly taxing survey. There's some multiple choice questions.
Yeah. And
then there's like I said, a few open-ended questions where people are free to kind of answer, as long as they would like.
Right. Because I know some of our older citizens aren't maybe used to getting on a computer and filling out surveys. It is very simple. But you have to have access to a computer and all that kind of stuff. SurveyMonkey is just the name of that survey company, so to speak.
Correct.
And all the ones that I've done, it's just really you're just pointing and clicking, and but there is a comment sections, and so it is pretty easy to get through.
Absolutely, and if if there is somebody out there that doesn't want to do the survey online, if they send us an email, they can email the planning department at sccmpc@stclaircounty.org. We can make sure that they get a paper copy and they can fill it out manually.
Yeah.
So that's completely fine as well.
Is that going to be at these meetings too, the paper copy?
We will, yeah.
Kind of might have be a good idea.
Exactly, and I know Wade Trim wanted to start the survey now, have it run through the first public forum, and there will be another public forum as well toward the end of summer. So this first one is more on the front end as they're doing their data collection, and this is an opportunity for us to kind of get this input from citizens.
Yeah.
The next one, there'll be a lot of that data collection will have already occurred. So then they'll have more to report out from that standpoint, as well as being able to tie that in with what comes out of the first input meeting. So that's sort of the process as it flows along.
Yeah, because it's very important to to stop anyone that is panicking about this. There is no intention that it's going to be another Hall Road. Because face it, we all moved out here because we like where we live, and I like having just a few traffic lights in my town, and that'll never change. Marine City's going to stay at our small community, and that's what we like, but to provide some areas of development for like you said, a plant like Magna, or you know, something else in the future. I mean, those provide jobs and local jobs, you know, which is huge, especially with, you know, what's happening with the economy. I mean, I'd much rather drive 10, 15 minutes to work than 45 to an hour, you know. So, yeah, sometimes these studies are, you know, and growth is a good thing, you know, if it provides the structure that you need to you know, keep your community alive and growing.
Sure, and you know, nobody wants to see Marine City Highway become Hall Road.
Right.
You know, as I mentioned, there's already local master plans in place, and even in their current future land use plans, you know, some of those townships have already planned for some sort of industrial growth along the corridor.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is going to be, you know, to look at those areas where it most makes sense. You know, at the end of this, I've said before, there's going to be recommendations in this plan. It's going to be up to those townships to look at those recommendations and maybe they integrate all of them, maybe they like some of them, maybe none of them.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing is going to be forced upon them to, you know, this plan, when it's done, this plan is not going to supersede local master plans. The county is not going to come in and rezone property.
Yeah.
We can't do that by law.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Zoning is very clear in the statutes that zoning follows master plans. We do not have county zoning in St. Clair County, so any sort of zoning decisions is going to be a local decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I would think that the majority of people would agree that something needs to get done with 26. I mean, a two-lane highway, you know, with a bunch of impatient people on it is not a good mix, you know. So, and even the intersections too, you know, something needs to get done with some of our bigger intersections and that kind of thing. So something has to get done, you know.
Yeah, you know, and in terms of transportation planning and what the consultants are working on, so they actually, I believe they just wrapped up their traffic counts along the corridor. So they had counters out for the entire corridor. They're looking at turning movements off the crossroads. They're going to be looking at traffic circulation issues and safety issues. So they'll be examining crash data for the entire corridor over the last 5 years. And with each of those different crashes, you know, what were the pavement conditions and what were some of the circumstances surrounding those those types of crashes. I think I mentioned earlier access management, all the curb cuts and driveways. That's a key thing as well in terms of land use and safety. And what they'll do is they take all of this data that they've collected, and these all become inputs into. They have basically a software program that allows them to do some transportation modeling. They'll do some of their own modeling as well as using a model that the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments uses. So SEMCOG is actually a regional planning agency that covers the 7-county metro Detroit area, and they do a lot of different traffic modeling as well. And that'll help our consultants, you know, take all the land use information, the market analysis that they draw in, the input from the public with all these inputs. That'll help them look out 20 years and sort of model some different growth scenarios and give us an idea of you know, what future conditions might look like. And so that's a super valuable thing to have for communities and decision makers going forward as they address their own plans or their own you know, policies for development.
Yeah. So even, you know, if anything, each municipality is going to, you know, number one, update their master plans, which is critical, and just get an idea of, you know, of what each community needs. And, you know, it's again, it's so good to start as something like this in its infancy stages, because then you can really plan. You know, you can plan for you know, residential areas, you know, and manufacturing areas and that kind of stuff, you know. So I think it's all a good thing. So as far as, like, you know, cost and, you know, money and, you know, so it's going to be, obviously we're going to look for some grants, and the state is going to help out and federal government helps out.
Yeah, I mean, at this point in time, I mean, it would be premature to say, you know, there's a cost amount associated with anything, because we don't know what that's going to look like. I mentioned that the Board of Commissioners has indicated that they're interested in potentially investing in infrastructure, you know, water and sewer improvements. And a lot of that's going to be kind of dictated by the future land use, and ultimately what local elected officials, in those communities want to see. So what they'll do in this process is they'll look at sort of existing capacity and demand issues. So they're talking to all the different plant operators in the southern part of the county, as well as our neighbors. So they're talking to New Baltimore, the Great Lakes Water Authority, to understand, who has capacity, what are the demand issues that are out there. And then in the places where it makes sense to run water and sewer, what does that look like in a way that'll be, make sense from a fiscal standpoint for communities. I think it's unrealistic to think that there's going to be water and sewer run down the entire 11 miles of the corridor.
Right.
We already know that in some areas of the corridor, there's a large swath of that that's planned for future agricultural use, right? So there's going to be sort of a mix of that. And, once the future land use aspects are sort of identified, then the consultants can then kind of create a roadmap or sort of a blueprint for, okay, if water and sewers to be implemented in this particular area, these are the systems that might be able to connect to that new infrastructure. But again, you have to have willing partners to do that.
Sure.
And so that's a big piece of this, is to find out what is the demand now, what capacity exists, and then what communities or what authorities might have the ability to take on some additional capacity. And just because they have capacity now doesn't mean that it necessarily will go for something along this corridor. They may have capacity that they're planning to use elsewhere in their community. So all of those discussions need to take place. And as I mentioned, it's all interrelated.
So the meeting is going to be in Marine City at the Lions Club on Ward Street. And why Marine City? Why was the meeting?
We really were just looking for a facility that we know would be able to hold, a large number of people. And so, while a township hall might be nice, a lot of the township halls that are along the corridor may not be conducive to a larger group. So that's the reason why the Lions Club was picked.
Yeah, okay. It holds about 100 people too. So.
Yep, I think I heard 115. So, and and we're expecting a good turnout, and we want people to come out and participate.
Yep, those that want to get into the work groups and give their input, and that'd be great. So, and then you said the next meeting is going to be in the fall.
It'll be, towards the end of summer, early fall. I don't have a date on that yet, but we'll certainly be, once it's ready to announce, we will announce that. A lot of that's going to depend on, how quickly they move along with all their analysis, and certainly what comes out of the first public forum as well as the survey data.
And then you can go on, so I'm just reiterating everything, you can go on and do the survey, right, from your website. And then there's going to be paper copies at the workshops.
Correct.
And it would be great to have those at the city municipalities too. And then this for information, if you just wanted to get information. And then of course, your county website for information.
Yep. Yeah, you can always go onto the Metropolitan Planning Commission website, and our email's on there. You can always give us a call if anyone has questions. We're happy to talk to you and keep you up to date on what's going on. Yeah,
good, very good. Anything else? We covered a lot.
Yeah, I think we covered it for now. So
you covered a lot. I think we're good. Okay, thank you for joining us. This was another edition of the Mayor Minute, and thank you for watching.